Hey, my name's James Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I want to talk about the budget, the tax raid that's coming your way in this week's budget. It's not a good budget, let's be honest. We are not expecting much positive news in there, and that's really frustrating because I've yet to see an example where you can tax a country and get it back on its feet. And businesses are struggling. They are laying off people at the moment. Unemployment is rising and the outlook just isn't positive. So to me, it's baffling that the plans that the government have got for this Wednesday's budget are to just tax and more tax. But that's where we are. In this video, I'm going to talk about the increases that we're expecting to see in your inheritance tax and the mansion tax, because that one is likely to go through as well, because other stuff that they've talked about and leaked to the media have been walked back, but these have stuck. So I'm confident that we'll see both of these increase in this week's budget. Now, if you're new around here and you haven't done already, do make sure you subscribe to the channel over there and hit that bell notification. We're on the way to 52,000 subscribers. And by subscribing, you'll get all the latest house price news, the budget news as it happens on Wednesday, property investing tips, and much, much more. And let's get some views on this video. Your part in that is simple. Smash like, tickle like, do something to that like button. That really helps with the YouTube algorithm, and that really has helped the channel grow. So thanks to everyone that does that. So the budget this week, I've really not seen anything good that's been in the leaks so far. And that frustrates me because the government aren't really helping people at the moment. We've got lots of threats to the economy. We've got things like AI that could increase unemployment massively. And so if you want to get things moving now prior to that kind of stuff, you need to have some support for businesses, get them moving again, and help people with affordability costs. Now, I had a business since around 2003, and my first business was an iPod accessory business, and Labour were in power then when we had the 2008 crash. And one of the smartest things that I felt that they did at that time was cutting VAT. When I started out in business and when I had a job, I recall, I don't know how long it was, but VAT was 17.5% for a long time. Well, they actually cut it to 15%, and I think if they didn't do that, things would have been a lot tougher than they actually were at that period of time. And right now, all I'm hearing is we're going to tax more and more because we've got a black hole. But you can grow your way out of a black hole. You can encourage businesses to set up in this country. You think the thing that's really pushing economies at the moment and keeping the stock market high is AI, but you can't really run an AI business in this country because one of the most important parts of an AI business is energy. And energy costs in this country can be as much as 4 times as much in other countries. So we're just not going to get any of that AI benefits. In fact, we're going to get the bad side of AI, which is going to be the lack of jobs that we'll have going forward, and that's going to be a big problem. And so in this budget this week, tax is going to be on the agenda. Firstly, they're going to talk about inheritance tax. Now, inheritance tax is something that can be a little controversial because those that aren't getting an inheritance are people normally on the side that say, well, good, tax these people. It's unfair that they get an inheritance. Let me give you my example. I will be getting 0 inheritance. My dad died when I was a baby, and my mother lives in an old people's home and has no money. So I will get a bill. Hopefully she doesn't die anytime soon, but at that point, I will actually get a bill. It will cost me money. So I surely would be someone to say, yeah, tax the inheritance, but I don't think that way because I have children and my children will inherit my properties and I don't want them to pay lots of tax on that, especially as I feel that the jobs that they might end up with might be not around. Like there's just going to be a lack of jobs, and I think it's going to be very difficult for that generation. And so inheritance tax frustrates me massively, but more for my children than how it's going to impact me. And so at the moment, the government, just the first 7 months of this year, took in £5.2 billion in inheritance tax. Now, this is up 200 million just in 7 months this year. And that's down to the fact, so realistically, at the end of this year, it's going to be up about 400 million by the end of the year, roughly, or thereabouts. And that's because assets have gone up very, very fast in that period of time. And in inheritance tax, you have a stealth tax. So you have an allowance that you can get an inheritance of £325,000 and pay nil tax on that. Now, that's stuck at that level since 2009. So really, if you take into account for inflation, that now should stand at 525,000, but it hasn't. So you're about 80 odd K worse off, or more than that. So that's 200K worse off, £200,000 worse off. And that's unfair. They do this with income as well. So the tax that you pay on your income tax. So the level that you get tax-free has stayed the same for a number of years now and isn't expected to rise anything before 2030. So that's the stealth tax, because what happens is more people go into that taxable bracket and more people start paying tax. You pretty much, if you're on the minimum wage, you will be paying tax now. So that's frustrating, and that's what they're doing with the inheritance tax here. Now, what other changes are likely to happen in the budget? Now, at the moment, you can have, there's a 7-year gift rule. And so what that means is you can gift any amount, well, up to about 325,000 to your family members, and they wouldn't pay any tax on that if you survive 7 more years. So that is expected to change. They're likely to change that to maybe 10 years. They're looking at changing that in the budget. So if you give a gift to your children and you pass away, they would then have to pay tax on that, which is frustrating. And so extending that is a little unfair. What they're also looking for here as well is you have something called, and that's part of something called partial exempt transfers. So what it means is that, let's just say I give Amelie 50 grand. Right, so I give her 50 grand out of her inheritance early, and then unfortunately I pass away before that 7-year period is up. Then she would have to pay some tax on that amount of money, and she might have spent it. She might have used it to buy her house that she wants to live in, or something along those lines. So that's something that they have. So what they're saying is that's partially exempt. So it's exempt if I survive. But if I don't survive, then tax would be due on that. They're looking at making a lifetime amount that you could possibly gift away now. So that's something that they're looking at here. So there's 2 ways they're going to look at clobbering people with inheritance tax. Let's see what happens. But yeah, it's definitely not going to be better. The other tax, the big one for property, is the one that's likely to stick, is this mansion tax. This has been talked about a lot. It's been talked about all weekend in the media, and Labour aren't turning away from this. They're not saying, yeah, no, that's wrong, we're not going to be doing that. They've tested the water, and I think maybe a lot of people see this as a positive because they won't be impacted right now. But this could go into a stealth tax at some point. So the proposal is that you'll pay a tax on properties over 2 million in value. And you wouldn't pay council tax then. And this would be significantly more. And so they said on a £6 million house, you could be paying £40,000 a year. Whereas those people might be paying a few thousand for council tax right now. And that, I think, is unfair, because these people could have bought the properties in the 50s or 60s and it was affordable in some areas of London, and they're now retired, and it could be a tiny little, just because it's called mansion tax, could be a tiny little flat in some areas of London that now could fall into this level. Now, those of you that say, well, that doesn't impact me. Well, what happens as properties go up in value, you get closer to that 2 million level, or they bring it down. So they start it at 2 million, and then in next year's budget, they bring it down to 1.5 million. And you're still thinking, well, that's not a problem for me. Then the next budget, they bring it down to 1 million, and then it sticks at 1 million. And then you think, well, that doesn't impact me. Well, it probably will, because I bought my first flat in Dorking in Surrey for 45 grand in 1999. It's worth 250 grand today. So it's gone up 5 times in value. So if that carried on, that little flat in Dorking that was a studio flat would fall into that in maybe 20 years. And so this is a stealth tax because they keep the levels the same and the property values go up and more people get brought into that every year. So these are 2 things that they're talking about. They're talking about stamp duty as well, maybe going and being replaced with property tax. I'm not seeing so much talk about that now this week, but we'll see. Does that continue? We'll get some more leaks, I'm sure, as we go into Wednesday's budget. I'll be sharing it with you as soon as the budget finishes. I'll get a live video on here and give you my reaction to what I feel the impact is on the property world. Now, before you go, do make sure you grab our Black Friday offer. It's been incredible, the amount of people that have enrolled into the Property Accelerator. And now is a good time to build your wealth, because there's a lot of people wanting to leave the market. So you can get some cracking deals on property at the moment. And then not just using a buy-to-let strategy, because I'll be honest, I don't think that's the strongest strategy in today's market. You need to look at high cash flow, like serviced accommodation, like HMO. But you then must buy properties that you can add value to. If you buy a property and it's all in perfect condition and you can't add any value to it, you're not going to build equity in there to protect yourself should there be a downturn in the market. So we cover that with something called the Buy, Refurbish, Refinance, Rent Accelerator. We've also got strategies in there if you don't have deposits to buy property. That's called Rent to Rent. We cover that in there as well. So at least check it out. It's in the description or in the first comment. Click on the link and check it out. Before you leave, smash like, do subscribe, and check out all the other content as well on this channel, including this video right here.